Picture Europe in the summer of 1914, a continent thriving with innovation, culture, and optimism. The streets were alive with the sounds of horse-drawn carriages, laughter, and music drifting from open cafes. People strolled through grand boulevards, marveling at the latest inventions and fashions, believing that progress was unstoppable. Cities like London, Paris, and Berlin buzzed with life, and the era was known as the Belle Époque, the beautiful era. Art, science, and technology flourished, and there was a sense that the future held endless possibilities. Theaters were packed, galleries displayed bold new works, and the skyline was changing with modern architecture. But beneath the surface, old rivalries and new ambitions simmered. Political leaders met in smoke-filled rooms, their faces tense as they debated the fate of nations. Headlines warned of crises and confrontations, hinting at the dangers lurking just out of sight. The great empires, Britain, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia, competed fiercely for power and influence. Each sought to expand its reach, building vast armies and navies, determined not to be left behind in the race for dominance. Germany, eager for its place in the sun, challenged Britain's dominance at sea, while France nursed old wounds from past defeats, especially the loss of Alsace-Lorraine. Military parades became more frequent, and memories of previous wars lingered in the minds of many. The Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires struggled to control their diverse populations, facing unrest and calls for independence. Meanwhile, Russia positioned itself as the protector of Slavs, fueling tensions in the Balkans and beyond. National pride and suspicion ran high, fueled by newspapers and patriotic education. Children learned songs about glory and sacrifice, while propaganda posters urged citizens to stand ready for their country. Leaders built up armies and forged secret alliances, turning Europe into a powder keg. Military drills became a common sight, and secret treaties bound nations together in webs of obligation and mistrust. The peace was fragile, held together by a precarious balance of power. Diplomats worked tirelessly to prevent conflict, but their efforts often seemed like patchwork over deep cracks. As families enjoyed what seemed like an endless summer, few realized how close they were to disaster. Parks were filled with laughter, and children played in the streets, unaware that their world was about to change forever. The world of parades and anthems was about to be shattered. The celebrations and patriotic songs masked the growing storm that threatened to engulf the continent. The summer of 1914 would be the last of its kind, before a storm changed everything. In just a few weeks, the optimism and peace of Europe would vanish, replaced by the chaos and tragedy of war. To truly understand how Europe plunged into the chaos of war, we must look at four powerful forces: militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. Together, they form the acronym MAIN, and each played a crucial role in shaping the continent's fate. Militarism meant that nations measured their greatness by military strength. Countries poured resources into building massive armies and navies, sparking a fierce arms race. The belief that military power was the key to national success made leaders more willing to use force to resolve disputes. Alliances created a tangled web of promises and obligations. On one side, the Triple Entente of France, Russia, and Britain. On the other, the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. These agreements were meant to keep peace, but instead, they made any conflict likely to spread rapidly. Rather than preventing war, these alliances acted as tripwires, ensuring that a small spark could trigger a much larger conflict involving all the major powers. Imperialism drove European nations to compete fiercely for colonies and resources around the globe. Germany, eager to catch up with Britain and France, pushed for its own empire, fueling rivalries and resentment. Clashes over distant lands and the exploitation of colonies stoked tensions back home, as each nation sought to expand its influence and wealth. Nationalism, the passionate belief in one's national superiority and destiny, inspired dreams of lost glory and independence. It united people, but also set them against their neighbors. In the Balkans, ethnic groups like Serbs and Bosnians yearned to break free from empires, making the region a powder keg ready to explode at the slightest provocation. Each of these forces, militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism, intensified the others, creating a Europe that was primed for catastrophe and unable to step back from the brink. The continent was a tinderbox with nerves stretched tight, one spark away from a massive explosion. Mistrust, ambition, and old rivalries made compromise nearly impossible, as leaders jockeyed for advantage and refused to back down. The stage was set for a conflict that would not only engulf Europe, but eventually draw in nations from around the world. These powerful forces didn't just shape politics, they shaped the destinies of millions, affecting families, workers, and children across the continent. The toxic mix of Maine would soon ignite the greatest and most devastating war the world had ever seen, changing history forever. Europe's leaders gambled recklessly with peace, unaware that the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. The countdown to disaster had begun, and there was no turning back. The spark came on June 28, 1914 in Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated by Gavrilo Princip, a young Serbian nationalist. Bosnia, recently annexed by Austria-Hungary, was a hotbed of resentment among Serbs dreaming of independence. The Black Hand, a secret nationalist group, plotted the attack. After a failed bombing, fate intervened. A wrong turn brought the Archduke face to face with Princip. 2 shots killed Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. The assassination shocked Europe and enraged Austria-Hungary. Vienna blamed Serbia, seeing an opportunity to crush nationalist threats. The event set off a diplomatic crisis no one could contain. What began as a local tragedy would soon ignite a global catastrophe. The powder keg had been lit. The world watched as alliances and ambitions collided. The countdown to war was unstoppable. The assassination triggered the July Crisis, a diplomatic domino effect that would soon engulf all of Europe. Tensions that had simmered for years suddenly erupted as leaders scrambled to protect their interests and honor their alliances. Austria-Hungary, emboldened by Germany's blank check of unconditional support, issued Serbia an ultimatum with harsh demands, hoping to crush Serbian nationalism once and for all. Serbia conceded to most demands, desperately trying to avoid war, but Austria-Hungary declared war anyway, determined to assert its dominance in the Balkans. Russia, bound by Slavic ties and its own ambitions, mobilized to defend Serbia. This move alarmed Germany, who saw Russian mobilization as a direct threat, prompting Germany to declare war on Russia. Germany's war plan, the Schlieffen Plan, required a rapid strike against France to avoid a two-front war. So, Germany declared war on France and invaded neutral Belgium, hoping for a swift victory. Britain, bound by treaty to protect Belgian neutrality and wary of German expansion, declared war on Germany, bringing the world's largest empire into the conflict. In just a matter of days, what began as a regional dispute spiraled into a continent-wide conflict, as alliances pulled more nations into the fray. The alliance system, originally designed to preserve peace and deter aggression, now ensured that any spark would ignite a total war involving all the great powers. Mobilization was irreversible. Once the armies began to move, the machinery of war could not be stopped, and millions were swept up in the conflict. Each nation acted out of fear, pride, and a sense of obligation to their allies, convinced that their own security and honor were at stake. The dominoes fell one by one: Austria-Hungary, Serbia, Russia, Germany, France, and finally Britain, all drawn in by the tangled web of alliances. The world was at war, with nations on every continent soon to be affected by the conflict's reach. Diplomacy failed, the machinery of alliances and mobilization took over, leaving little room for compromise or retreat. The hopes of a peaceful Europe vanished overnight, replaced by uncertainty and fear as the first shots were fired. The war's scale and speed stunned everyone. Civilians and soldiers alike were caught off guard by the rapid escalation and the sheer magnitude of mobilization. The old world order, with its empires and monarchies, collapsed in a matter of weeks, forever changing the face of Europe. The Great War had begun, setting the stage for a century of conflict and upheaval. The war everyone thought would be short became a nightmare of trench warfare. Soldiers faced mud, rats, disease, and constant danger in trenches stretching from the North Sea to Switzerland. No Man's Land was a deadly expanse of barbed wire and shell craters. Machine guns, poison gas, and artillery made attacks suicidal. New weapons like tanks and gas masks changed the face of battle. Life in the trenches was misery, cold, wet, and filled with death. The war became a brutal stalemate measured in lives lost, not ground gained. Hope faded as the reality of industrialized slaughter set in. The Western Front became a symbol of modern hell. For years the United States stayed neutral, but economic ties to the Allies and German submarine warfare changed everything. The sinking of the Lusitania and the Zimmermann telegram, Germany's secret offer to Mexico, outraged Americans. By 1917, Germany resumed unrestricted submarine attacks, risking U.S. entry. President Wilson asked Congress to declare war, vowing to make the world safe for democracy. American troops and resources gave the exhausted Allies new hope. Russia's collapse freed German forces, but U.S. involvement tipped the balance. The arrival of fresh American soldiers boosted morale and manpower. U.S. industry supplied weapons and food, shifting the war's momentum. The entry of America marked a turning point. The path to Allied victory was now within reach. By 1918, Germany gambled on a final offensive before American forces arrived in full. The spring offensive made early gains, but exhausted German troops and resources. The Allies, now unified and reinforced by Americans, counterattacked in the 100 Days Offensive. The German army retreated, the Central Powers collapsed one by one. Revolutions and mutinies swept Germany. Kaiser Wilhelm abdicated. On November 11, 1918, an armistice was signed. The guns fell silent, the war was over. Europe was devastated, millions dead, empires shattered. The old world was gone, replaced by uncertainty and grief. The cost was unimaginable. The Great War ended, but its consequences were just beginning. The world would never be the same. The peace to come would prove as difficult as the war itself. In 1919, Allied leaders met in Paris to shape the post-war world. President Wilson pushed for his 14 points and a League of Nations, but France demanded harsh terms for Germany. The Treaty of Versailles forced Germany to accept blame, pay reparations, and lose territory. The treaty redrew borders, creating new countries but also new tensions. The Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian empires vanished, replaced by fragile new states. Many ethnic groups found themselves minorities in unfamiliar nations. The treaty's harshness bred resentment in Germany, sowing seeds for future conflict. Hopes for lasting peace faded as old grievances lingered. The settlement aimed to end war, but instead, it set the stage for another. The legacy of Versailles would haunt Europe for decades. World War I reshaped the world, toppling empires, redrawing borders, and shifting power to the United States. The economic toll led to the Great Depression and fueled extremism, especially in Germany. The humiliation of Versailles and economic hardship paved the way for Hitler and World War II. The war's trauma scarred a generation, changing art, literature, and society. Women gained new roles, accelerating the push for rights and social change. The dream of self-determination was only partly fulfilled, leaving new conflicts behind. The war's lessons are stark. Nationalism, militarism, and alliances can spiral into disaster. Remembering the Great War is a warning. Peace is fragile and its loss is catastrophic. The echoes of 1914 still shape our world. Understanding its causes and consequences remains as vital as ever.